Hey, wanted to create this video on how to set up a CashShuffle JavaScript development environment. So hopefully if you're watching this, you're familiar with what Bitcoin Cash is, the cryptocurrency, and you're also familiar with CashShuffle. If you're not, you should go to CashShuffle.com and read all about it. Basically, just to recap on what CashShuffle is and the value it provides to the community. Dollars, cash, have this property called fungibility. And what fungibility is, it's a big word for a very simple concept. It's the idea that if you go to your local grocery store and you hand them a dirty, stained $20 bill, they'll accept it as $20. And if you offer someone a dirty, stained $20 bill and a crisp, clean, new $20 bill, they're both worth $20. And that property is called fungibility, that each unit of a currency is exactly equal to each other unit of a currency. And Bitcoin is not fungible by default. And because it's a public ledger, everything can be traced back to its origin, and so you get this idea, this concept of blacklists, where organizations are tracking where Bitcoin have been, and they'll say, no, I don't want this Bitcoin, I'm not going to accept this Bitcoin, I'm only going to accept Bitcoin that I can track. And this is a problem. This is a really big problem, and we need to introduce fungibility into Bitcoin. And that's exactly what CashShuffle does. So from a very high level, what CashShuffle is, it's imagine you and a bunch of your friends stand around a table, and you all take out a bunch of 1s and 5s and 10s and 20s, and you all throw them on the table and you mix them around, and then you all take back exactly the same amount of money that you put in. So when you walk away, you haven't made or lost any money. The only difference is that the money that's in your wallet now is random. Like you can't really say who had it before, and so that basic exercise, as inane as that sounds, if you were actually to do it with real dollars, because dollars have fungibility. If you doing it with Bitcoin introduces this concept of fungibility. So that's what CashShuffle does. It just shuffles Bitcoin around in order to obfuscate it, so that other people that you are transacting commerce with in Bitcoin can't follow it back to where it's been. The obvious overreach here is governments doing that, but there's also like just day-to-day general merchants. Like you don't want any random person that you do business with to be able to look at the blockchain and follow where your money is all the way back to your cold wallet. Nobody wants that. And so it's very practical. So this isn't just like some crazy anarchist thing. It's a very pragmatic approach to finance. So that's what CashShuffle is. That's why it's important. And this video is going to talk about how to set up a development environment. And in particular, it's going to focus on the new JavaScript library created by Always Anon. Huge shout out. He is a pillar to the community. And he's put a lot of work into this JavaScript library, and he's shown me how to set up this development environment. So I figured I would pay the favor forward by creating this video and show people how to go step by step and create your own development environment and begin playing with this amazing JavaScript library, which should make it easier to integrate CashShuffle into other wallets. Okay, so with that, let's get started. So at the end of this video, these are the deliverables. So you're going to have a local CashShuffle server set up. You're going to have 3 JavaScript clients running and successfully shuffling. So the emphasis here is on local development. This won't attach the clients to the public CashShuffle server. So that's important. I want to set expectations that you won't be able to connect to the public CashShuffle server at the end of this video with this thing. This is just for locally, so that you can get in and look under the hood and understand how the code's working, see it working in real life, so that you can then be better able to wade through the code and then integrate that code into your own wallet system. So this is really just a start. So there's a couple prerequisites. Docker and Node.js are the two prerequisites, so you need to have those installed. And I have a link here to my blog where I have some DevOps notes that show how to... Oh, I guess I have it open right here. So if you want a quick recipe on how to install Node, I've got that right here. A quick recipe on how to install Docker. Another caveat is that this video is going to focus on Linux as the operating choice of development. And I can already hear people groaning, like, why didn't you do it in Windows? Why didn't you do it in Mac OS? The thing is, if you want to be a serious developer, you need to at least become comfortable with Linux, because that's what the infrastructure that runs the internet. And you're not going to be able to go very far in your career without becoming comfortable with Linux. And so what I'm going to show today is the use of VirtualBox, and this is a piece of software that's free, as in free beer, and you can download it. It runs on Mac and Windows and Linux, and it allows you to run a virtual Ubuntu, or I'm going to focus on Ubuntu, but it lets you run a virtual machine. And so that's the best way to set up this kind of development environment, because you're not jeopardizing the functionality of your day-to-day computer. By keeping everything inside of a virtual machine, you have the freedom to kind of try weird things that might, break stuff, and without any fear, because it's in a virtual machine, and you can just, delete that virtual machine and start over, save your game, go back. And so that's the advantage of a virtual machine. So Docker and Node are really the only hard prerequisites, and again, if you need to install them, here's some quick recipes, or a quick Google search, or a quick hop on YouTube. Should make it pretty easy and fast to get those installed, but they're outside the scope of this video. So is installing VirtualBox. There's lots of great YouTube videos on how to install VirtualBox, how to install Ubuntu Linux. I recommend Ubuntu 18.04 or whatever the LTS, the LTS's long-term support version is. You should use that. So these are the prerequisites. And here's an outline of what we're going to be doing. We're going to set up and install a local cache server. And we're going to start that server with the debug settings and a pool of 3 players. The default is 5, so which means you have to have 5 people standing around the table throwing their money in. And the minimum that you can run a server is 3, so we're going to set it up to run 3. And then we'll clone and install the CashShuffle JS library 3 times to create these 3 players. We'll fund each of them with like 5 cents. And that's the great thing about Bitcoin Cash. You can do micropayments. So yeah, we'll fund each one with like 5 cents and then start the shuffle. And at that point, once we've achieved a successful shuffle, if you can get to that point, that means you have like a development environment. You can run everything the way it's supposed to be running, which means that you can get into the code and like insert console log statements and have a better ability to understand what's going on under the hood, which is the point. And it's the first step in modifying the code for your own wallet implementation. So here's VirtualBox. This is what it looks like. I am going to roll my virtual machine back so that I'm starting from essentially scratch. This is a base image that I have saved, and it has Docker and Node.js installed on it already. So like I said, I'm not going to go over the installation of those in this video because it's outside the scope. But basically, this is where you should be starting. You should install VirtualBox on your machine. You should install Docker and Node.js on that virtual machine. And then so go ahead and pause the video and do those, and then come back, and then you can follow along with the video. So just giving it a minute to boot up. So like you can see, this is just a normal Ubuntu desktop, and probably the easiest way to go about this is the terminal, and I'm in a terminal window, and that's awesome. I have Open SSH server installed on here, which runs on port 22. And so SSH is like it's a way to do this terminal remotely, and that's what I'm leading up to. I don't actually like to use the graphical user interface on these things, although I'm sure most people would. But if you go, so let me show you what I'm doing here. This is the machine that's running. I go to settings. I go to the network area, advanced, port forwarding. And you can see here that I have port 22 forwarded to port 2222 on my host. So if I SSH into my local computer on port 2222, it's going to forward that connection to this virtual machine. So that's what I'm going to do, so that I don't have to be stuck in this weird little graphical user interface. I am going to SSH into my local computer on port 2222. So there now I'm on my regular computer, but I'm commanding and controlling my virtual machine. So if I like list the directory, you can see I have this Go 111, and if I go here and I list the directory, you can see I have Go 111. So I'm on the same machine. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not actually on my normal machine. You can see it says Trout VB. I'm talking to the virtual machine. So that's where we're going to start. Okay, so let's go through our outline here. So first of all, we want to set up and install the local cache server. Now, all the links for the software can be found at CashShuffle.com. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's links here. Here's the link to the server software. Here's the link to the client software. Let's just open that up. So here's the CashShuffle server software. It's implemented in Go. You can see that if you click here on GitHub. 97.7% of the code is written in Go. There's also a Docker container, and that's what I'm going to make use of. So I'm actually going to close this, and what I did is I forked that repository. So if you go to GitHub/Chris Troutner/CashShuffle, that's my fork. I've done almost nothing. What I did is I edited the Docker file, the very last line. Right here, I added this part right here, which starts the server with a pool size of 3 and sets it in debug modes, which just means it writes more, it's noisier, it writes stuff to the console, which as a developer you're going to want to see. And I also added this build shell script and this run shell script. And all they do is it makes this Docker syntax can be pretty archaic, and so by putting them into a shell script, it just makes it easier, because you're like, I want to build it, so I just run this build script, or I want to run it, so I run the shell script. I don't have to remember all the little idiosyncrasies of the Docker syntax. So those are the only differences that I've made. So what you want to do is clone that repository. Right there, git clone my CashShuffle server fork, and go into CashShuffle. And so, like I said, I've got Docker running, 1806 it looks like, and I have Node installed as well as NPM installed. So these are the versions I'm running, and again, like I said, I'm on Ubuntu 1804. So the closer you can get to using the same versions of stuff that I'm using, the more likely you're going to have exactly the same results I'm having. Okay, so I'm going to run this. So I'll just show you again what's inside the build script. That's the command we're actually running, and we're going to build the Docker image. So that's going out and it's pulling the Go compiler, version 1.12, and so it's going to run through the Docker script, and it's going to build a Docker container with the CashShuffle server in it. So I'm going to pause the video here and just let it finish doing its thing. Okay, the Docker container finished building. So with that, I can run this. So again, I'll show you what's inside the shell script. That's it. And you can see this is pretty long. I don't want to type that every time. It's much easier just to run the shell script. So that's why I do it this way. But let me walk you through. So it's going to create a Docker container named CashShuffle using the image CashShuffle Server, which is what we just built. And it's going to expose these ports 1337, 1338, and 8080. And it's just going to expose them. So we kind of have a Russian doll thing going on here. We have the host machine, then we have the virtual machine, and then we have the Docker container inside the virtual machine. So it's important to keep track of what's going on here. So this is going to open these ports on the virtual machine, not the host machine. And let's see. Okay, so I ran it, and if I go Docker PS, I can see that it's running. It was created 6 seconds ago. It's been up for 5 seconds. I can go Docker logs and CashShuffle. And there's the output. And I am going to follow this output. So this window over here on the left, this is going to be the CashShuffle server. So that's up and running. And now that we have, so let's go back to our outline. So we set up and installed the local CashShuffle server. I showed how it's set up with the debug settings and a pool of 3 players. So we've completed steps 1 and 2. So now we can move on to the JavaScript client. And yeah, cool. Okay, so again, I'm going to log back in to the virtual machine. Okay, cool. And here's the CashShuffle directory where our server lives. And so that's the server. So now let's talk about the client. That's here. You can also get there. Let's see. Well, this link is going to send you to the Electron Cash wallet. The JavaScript library that AlwaysAnon created is on GitHub. And I don't know if there's a convenient link anywhere. You might just have to type it in or go to my GitHub repository. But it lives at github.com/alwaysAnon/CashShuffleJS-web. There's a couple other like dash other things or just CashShuffleJS. Those are like older versions, so it's important that you find the right version. And again, I forked this. I'm not even sure if I made any changes, but after I make this video, I am going to make changes and try and incorporate CashShuffle into my own Bitcoin Cash command line library. And but anyways, so I'm going to use my fork, but the original is linked right here below my fork if you want to get to the original. And always suggest starting with the original if you can. Give this a read through. This JavaScript library is a little rough, which is why I'm making this video, to encourage other developers to set up their own development environment and start working on this code base and improve it, make it more usable, make it more user-friendly, make it better documented. AlwaysAnon has just done a Herculean task in getting the library to the point that it's at. And but now that he has done the heavy lifting, all the application developers, such as myself, can leverage his work and start implementing it into other wallets and make the Bitcoin Cash more fungible. And that's going to happen by getting this library into new wallets. So, all right. So to get back, this is the repo we're going to be using. So I'm going to copy that URL, and I'm going to I'm going to make a directory called client, and I'm going to go in there. And so I'm gonna make 3 clients. I'm gonna go client CashShuffle 1. That's what I'm going to do. CashShuffle 1, and then I'm going to clone it here. Okay, so I can go in there, and I'm going to run npm install. This is going to install all the JavaScript dependencies. And I'm just going to load my notes up here. So if you go to, okay, so the dependencies are installed. If you go to the bottom of this README, there's a couple links to these YouTube videos. And that's where I got these commands that I'm about to use. I have in my notes. Okay, so now that that's installed, I'm going to replicate it 3 times, because we're going to need 3 players. Okay, there I have 3 copies. And let's see. So, and because we're running a local server, everything's just going to work, and that's the nice thing. Everything is set up for a local server, so we don't have to change any server settings or anything like that. So I think the first thing to do is to run this test shuffle application, and that's what we're going to be running. And it's going to kind of stall, but it's going to drop you into this what is called a REPL, which is like just a command line. And again, I got the commands I'm about to use off of those other YouTube videos. So if I go wallet.coins, I can see that it's an empty array. It has nothing. And so I'm going to go, let's see, adder, short for address, equals wallet.fresh.deposit. And that's going to create a new address. And then I'm going to go adder.fund. And there we go. And then it gives me a QR code. Oops. Which is huge. So I'm gonna shrink down the screen here a little bit. And what you can't see, what's happening off the screen, is I am opening my Bitcoin Cash wallet. And I'm gonna scan this QR code with my Bitcoin.com Bitcoin Cash wallet, and I'm gonna send it 5 cents. And I'm just gonna pause because this is gonna take a minute. Okay, so I have my Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin.com wallet on my mobile phone loaded, and I'm going to scan this QR code. And what's cool, what I want to show here, is that this has a WebSocket connection to rest.bitcoin.com, so it's going to pick up on this fund pretty quickly. So let's see. All right, I scan the QR code. I'm putting in 5 cents. I haven't hit go yet. Okay, so watch the screen. I'm going to send it right now. So it's sending the transaction, and bam, like, what was that? Less than 5 seconds. Definitely less than 5 seconds. So it has money, and that's awesome. And now we can make this regular size again. And so now that this has been funded, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to do that to all the other 2 copies that I created. I'm going to do the same thing I just did 3 times. Okay, node test. Okay. Adder equals wallet.fresh.deposit. adder.fund. Okay, I got that one going. I'm going to do the same thing here. Oops. Wallet.fresh.deposit. Okay, so let's fund these. Okay, sending 5 cents to this one. Got that. And got that. So I'm going to send, I should have sent different amounts because otherwise it's going to do this one shuffle and be done with everybody. So I'm going to send 10 cents to this one. And I'm going to go back to the second client and send another like 3 cents to this one, just so they have slightly different amounts. This might end poorly, I don't know. I haven't done this before. Okay. I don't think it will, but let's find out. Cool. Okay, so we've got 3 clients running, and they have all been funded. And oh, okay, so you know, there you go. It's already off and running. That's just it. That's all you needed to do, is just run 3 clients and fund them. Yeah, so you can see I thought there was another step there, but I guess there's not. So I just have 3 clients, 1, 2, 3, and they're running the same script, and they're connected to the server. And over here on the server, you can see these debug packets flying around. And yeah, and this is the message you're trying to go for, that it's been successfully shuffled. And there's a lot of messages and noise here, but being able to get to this point where you have your server and you have 3 clients and they're successfully shuffling, now as a developer you have the environment to go into the actual code and really pick through it and understand what's going on under the hood. And so let me just point some of this out. What we just ran is this CashShuffle.js. We ran three copies of that. So if you go in here, this is probably the place to start if you want to start to understand the code and what's going on. What it does is add client to shuffle. Yeah, this is where the magic happens. Shuffle it, and then it calls this. It instantiates a shuffle client, and then passes in this this information to instantiate a shuffle client. And so this is using the ES8 JavaScript classes, and they're all in this lib folder. And so that test program calls shuffle client calls shuffle round calls com channel. And so com channel is dealing with the communication between the client and the server, which is a little different from a JavaScript standpoint, it's using protobufs and WebSockets instead of JSON and a REST API, which would be more normal in the JavaScript world. So that's part of what makes this a little weird from a JavaScript standpoint. And then, yeah, and then the client is the client you're running. That's the CashShuffle client, and then each round is like its own class. And then there's other utility libraries in here, but that's basically where to start. And let's just go back to the outline, make sure we covered our bases. So, cloned and installed CashShuffle. We replicated it, so we had 3 copies. I funded all 3 copies, and then I didn't have to start the shuffle. They just automatically started and succeeded. So that's pretty cool. And I walked through the code. So just to recap on this, place to start is CashShuffle.com. That's where all the information is about CashShuffle. It'll point you to the technical, the specifications and all the technical references. And like I showed, it'll link to the server. You can find my own fork of the CashShuffle server right here. And like I showed, I ran it in Docker. It's a Go app, but so you can run it natively in Go, or you can just run that Docker container. And then I showed the fork of the CashShuffle JS library and how to access the code and walk through that. So that's everything you need. None of this is associated with developer.bitcoin.com, but I, Chris Troutner, that's what I work on. I work for Bitcoin.com, and I help oversee the developer.bitcoin.com space. So if you're a JavaScript developer, I strongly encourage you to go there. We make a lot of tools and libraries for JavaScript developers to get started with Bitcoin Cash, just like this CashShuffle stuff. And I am also going to be continuing to play with this CashShuffle JavaScript library and incorporating it into different projects. And actually, let me just switch bases here and show you Bitcoin. Let's see, GitHub. This is the Bitcoin.com GitHub repository where all of our open source code lives, and all of our code is open source, so this is all of our code. And what I'm hoping to do is, over the next few weeks, incorporate CashShuffle into this BCH CLI wallet, or CLI stands for Command Line Interface. So I encourage you to come here and play with this, because this is a Command Line Bitcoin Cash wallet. It's fully functional. It works. It's also an NPM library, so you can include it in your own apps and instantly give your app a wallet. It can hold Bitcoin Cash, it can spend Bitcoin Cash, it can receive Bitcoin Cash, and just by including this library. And so I'm hoping to, my personal end goal with all this CashShuffle work and this CashShuffle library is to incorporate it in here. So this might be of interest to you if you're watching this video. You can always reach out to me on Twitter at Chris Troutner. And yeah, I'm always trying to bring more developers into the ecosystem and onboard JavaScript developers in particular into the Bitcoin Cash area. We always need more developers. It's an inspiring community. There's people like Always Anon who created this CashShuffle library who just, they never stop building, and everybody behind the whole CashShuffle project. They're just pillars of the community, too many to name. And if you want to be a rockstar developer, the best place is to get involved with CashShuffle, get on their Telegram channel, and start talking with those rockstar developers. All right, thanks for watching.